I want to start with a question that Manny had. I was reading a couple of articles today by Courtney Cronin and our very own Matthew Collar at ESPN.com and ScoreNorth.com, respectively, about how hard it might be to replace Anthony Barr. But, Manny, you brought a bigger and I think more important question to the table when it comes to the Vikings, because it's not just Anthony Barr. You asked how many veteran players, period, in general, can this Vikings team afford to lose and still remain in the category of contenders?
Yeah, because, I mean, Ramie, you and I last week, we kind of went through all the different guys that the Vikings can release and free up a cap space to go out and spend money on guys. And
I have that list right here.
Offensive line. And
it was Remmers, Rhodes, Sendejo, Rudolph, and Griffin.
Yeah, and now some of those guys I think are replaceable, but it's also one of those things, man, you got to think, okay, how many of these guys can they let go and replace and still keep themselves in contending form? Because this was a team that, as it is right now, they were 8-7-1. So they have to get better. And can you afford to lose enough guys and still manage to be better as a football team?
Because when you talk about these guys, Manny, you're not just talking about. I think we were all on the same page when it came to Anthony Barr, that you couldn't sign him to an extension.
Right.
You couldn't put that franchise tag on him. It was just too expensive. And so we understand that. But at the same time, you're not just losing the guy out there on the field. And this goes for, I think, a lot of these guys that we're talking about. You're losing that veteran presence. This was Mike Zimmer at the Combine last week, Judd, talking about everything that Anthony Barr does for this defense and for this Vikings football team.
You know, I think with him, it's the same with Anthony Barr. We would love to have them both back. The question is where is the market going to go, and can we afford them? If we can afford them, we're going to bring them back. And if we can't afford them, then we're going to have to move on, unfortunately.
That's him talking. He was asked about Sheldon Richardson and Anthony Barr if they would like to have them both back. And, you know, Sheldon Richardson's another guy. He's another guy on that list that he's not a guy that they would release. He's a free agent, but you got to think about trying to replace him too.
So, guys, of the list that you just went through, tell me if you can keep one. So let's say that you're going to pay one. Which do you keep?
Well, I think another guy you need to add to that list is another veteran who looks like he's on his way out, and that's Latavius Murray. So now we're up to Remmers, Rhodes, Sendejo, Rudolph, Griffin, and Murray. And Rhodes is unlikely to go anywhere, Judd, if we're being realistic. He has a $13.4 million price tag. That just comes from people throwing out there that you could open up a lot of cap room by trading Xavier Rhodes and utilizing the depth that you have at the cornerback position. But that's not coming from the Vikings at all. That's just from folks like us in the media and our reckless speculation. But you're looking at Remmers, Sendejo, Rudolph, Griffin, and throw Latavius Murray in there. And you're asking which one of those guys can you afford to keep?
So you said Remmers,
yes,
Sendejo,
Rudolph,
Latavius Murray, Rudolph, and Griffin.
And Sheldon Richardson. I'm sorry, we got to throw Sheldon Richardson in there.
Because Richardson's the guy, if he's willing to return at a semi-reasonable price, I probably keep. Remmers, if I can create room there, I can improve at guard. If he's not going to play right tackle, I cut him. Okay? Murray, I can replace. Running backs, I can go find you one. I can fly back home today, go to Egan, make some phone calls, and get you one. I'm not kidding.
You have to go to Egan to make the phone calls? You can just sit there in the press box in Fort Myers and make the phone calls.
Hypothetically, if I flew back right now and I went from the airport, the short jaunt to the Vikings TCO Performance Center, and I made some phone calls, I can find you a running back to back up Dalvin Cook. Sendejo, I think, is gone for sure, right? There's no question he's gone. Rudolph, in my mind, needs to restructure, and if he doesn't, he's gone. And Griffin needs to restructure, and if he won't, he's gone. Because here's what I would throw back at you guys to the question. This is a league, there is no doubt in your mind, or at least in mine, that you do not continue to pay a guy because you like him or think he was a good guy or think he helped the team at one time. If he can't contribute near a 90% of what he was capable of in his prime, I think he either restructures or is gone. Which is why the Waynes and Rhodes conversations are a bit more difficult, because those guys I think are still very good. Mm-hmm. But of the list, Ramie, that you just went through, every one of those guys I can replace.
Mhm. And I know Judd, on paper it doesn't look like any of those guys are hard to replace, but the other thing that Mike Zimmer said was he talked about how much Anthony Barr helped the other guys on the defense. It wasn't just, the size and the sideline to sideline speed that he brings to the table. He was a guy who could tell other guys on the defensive line or other linebackers where to line up or what to expect based on a formation. Here's what Mike Zimmer said. He has a really good grasp on what we're doing defensively. He has a good grasp on what the offense is doing. He can communicate to the defensive line and the other linebackers, and I think that helps a lot to be able to do the things we are trying to do. And I think that's what you lose, not just with Anthony Barr,
He's a
but
boss, yes.
I
that's
think
true.
I think with a guy like Kyle Rudolph. I think he's another guy who's been in this league for a long time and sees things in the defense that he can relay to Kirk Cousins or his coaches. I think that veteran presence throughout a roster, beyond just the talent and the production that they bring on the field, but how they affect the guys around them, is something that we look past a lot. And I think there's something to what Manny is saying here, that when you lose these guys, and not just their production, but their leadership and their knowledge of the game, you're losing a lot, and it's not as easy to replace as it might look on paper.
I think that's true to a certain degree, but I also think it gets to the point where if a guy comes back and he's got a contract, and I agree that players get screwed here, all right? Absolutely. It's the only league where you sign a contract and you don't know how long that team is going to keep you, and it's not guaranteed, or at least fully guaranteed. But this is one league where I think you've got to be very careful of balancing, okay, this guy is a great veteran presence and he brings a lot and maybe he sees some things, with, are we paying him too much now? Because the advantage that teams have in this league that they exploit all the time is they can cut guys. And I think in the case of Kyle, if they cut him, we talked about this a couple days ago on the show, there's no cap hit, basically, right?
Right.
So in that situation, to me, I can get you a tight end who can be pretty good. And Kyle's a nice player. I don't think he's a great player. I see what you're saying. I don't disagree, but I think you also have to be very careful about keeping too many guys because you think that they are guys who are ingrained with the team and can help. I think that's a balancing act. And in the case of Barr, you guys, we knew for a fact that Anthony Barr was going to be gone
Yes.
when he didn't get extended last year. The Vikings, if the Vikings are going to keep you, they extend you. There are not many guys, unless I'm completely swinging and missing with this opinion here, I don't recall too many guys that the Vikings, since the Wilfs bought the team in 2005, have taken into the last year of their contracts and then signed. Ordinarily, they jump the gun and sign guys early. So the preparation for Barr's departure basically should have been made a year ago in the summer when he didn't sign here, and we basically all knew, okay, he's going to play that contract out and he's going to be gone.
And there were rumors with Barr last summer too, Judd, about them possibly thinking about trading him too, right? Those were the rumors that we were hearing.
And in fact, I guess it's come out in the last couple of weeks now that there was a full expectation that during training camp, during that time that he disappeared from practices, that they were close to a trade and it didn't get made.
Really? It was that close?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not surprised. I guarantee you, the Vikings knew at some point in July or August of this past year that he was gone. They are just, with players like that, the Vikings are very good about locking you up a year before you're going to hit the market, or you're usually gone.
So, Judd, off that list, Remmers, Sendejo, Rudolph, Griffin, Murray, Richardson, and Barr, who did you say you would bring back?
Richardson intrigues me at the right price. I would probably pursue him because Barr, I would keep Barr, but I think Barr's going to cost way too much.
Right.
I think somebody's going to pay Barr.
I think we can pretty much count Barr as gone.
So let's say he's gone. So if you give me that list now, sans Barr, I try and keep Sheldon.
And that's it. Everybody else you're willing to let go with.
The rest of that list I can replace. The rest of that list I can, and I think Kyle, if I was advising Kyle, I would tell Kyle, restructure your contract, dude.
Restructure and stay
You
here.
knew this was coming. You knew when you got this contract, when you looked at that contract, you should have been fully aware of the fact that they were going to come back to you at some point to restructure that contract. So from the Rudolph camp, if I was advising him, I would say do it, restructure.